Hi everyone, welcome to the first day of London Design Week. My name is Sarah Spiteri and I am the Editorial Director of Homes and Gardens. I'm utterly delighted to be hosting this talk today with the incredible designer Jake Arnold. Jake has built an extensive portfolio of residential interiors and commercial spaces for high-profile clients, including John Legend and Chrissy Teigen, Rashida Jones, Katy Perry and Whitney Cummings. He set up his practice in 2020 and already leads a team of 11 from his studio on the Santa Monica Boulevard in LA. Jake's unique aesthetic sensibility comes from integrating the traditional design of his London upbringing with a more relaxed Californian take on style. He's also, as you're about to see, an absolute delight. There's no surprise that he has risen so quickly to stardom. And in addition to his interior design studio, Jake recently co-founded The Expert, a platform for virtual design consultations, which now has around 130 of the most sought after designers from around the world on it. It essentially offers a chance for anyone to undertake hour-long sessions with the good and the great of the industry. So we'll also chat to Jake a little bit about that. But without any further ado, Jake, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you. What an intro. Oh my God, I feel like I do that every morning. Thank you.
Now, I wanted to start our conversation from the very beginning with you telling us about your career so far and your move from the UK to the US. So do you want to kind of, where did it all begin?
Yes, I'll give you the short of the long, whatever the saying is. But essentially, when I studied business and economics at the University of Nottingham, so the opposite of what I do now. But since I was about 6, I was obsessed with interiors, and I would always move around my house, my room, everything. I would get sent home from my friends' houses for breaking furniture. And then in my last year of university, I have no idea why I did this, but I downloaded Twitter and I was looking for interior designers in London to do an internship. And the third company that came up was a design firm based in West Hollywood in LA that was an interior design company. And I was Googling them and they were doing the most amazing projects and work. And I just thought, you know what, I'm going to tweet them and say, hi, my name is Jake. I'm in London. I would love to do an internship in the summer. And at this whole time, I was reading a lot of books and in the spiritual world, which I won't get too deep to, but I was like, you know what, I'm going to do something that's not typical. And they actually responded and we ended up having a Skype interview at the time, not even Zoom, Skype. And they ended up saying to me, come for a month, we'll do an internship, not paid. I'd never been to LA before once. And I came, I didn't know a soul. They really took me under their wing and they were amazing to me. And as soon as I came to LA after the first 3 weeks, I was like, this is exactly where I need to be doing. I didn't even realize that what I do today, kind of existed in this realm. So it was kind of an eye opener to me. And then when I came to do the internship, they asked me to stay a little longer. And then obviously because of all the logistics, the boring stuff, I went back to London. All my friends who graduated and got real jobs. And then I decided to walk into All Saints and ask for a job because I, in my head, was moving to LA. They hadn't offered me a job, nothing. And I walked into All Saints. I was like, I need to work here for 3 months until I'm moving to LA. I made up this whole story. And then every day when people would say, oh, I'll see you soon, I was like, I'm actually moving. And I had this whole idea that I truly manifested it. And then they eventually sponsored me. I came to LA, worked with them, worked with another architect, another designer. Was the hardest thing I've ever done. And then my biggest kind of break really is when I was working with an architect. He also had, the client also wanted to do interior design. And she'd asked me at the time, this is Julianne Huff, who was one of my very good friends now and was an incredible support at the beginning of my career. She said to me, she was like, do you know anyone who would do my house? And at the time, I have no idea why I said, I'll do it. And I didn't have one vendor, one contact, nothing. I remember the first day I showed up and the electrical for the sconces on the wall were basically on the ground. And I was having a meltdown. And everything I learned, honestly, over the last 10 years has been on the job and really learning from designers, architect that I work for, and really just making mistakes. And I always say that to everyone who works for me, like making a mistake is how you learn. Just don't do it twice. But that's really, and then cut to after that, we shot that house and it was the cover of a magazine. And then I met, it was almost like like a domino effect where everything after that just kind of flowed. So it sounds very easy and clean and lovely, but it's been a journey, which I'm still.
And how do you think you're, segueing from there, talking, I guess, about your style? Because I think what is really unique is, you do have this kind of British background and heritage, and you can see that in your projects, but obviously also there's a real sense of California in there. So, when you first started working, has that developed quite significantly over the last 10 years, or do you think that was something that came to you very naturally?
I think with anything, there's always an evolution. And I think that my personal style definitely grew, evolved. And I think it's a big part of being exposed to different environments and growing up in England, which to me I love because it's cozy, comfortable, rich, layered, and timeless. And that's like the forefront of British design to me. And then that contrast in California where it's very indoor, outdoor, relaxed, and all about like a different type of palette in terms of materiality, texture. So it was really felt organic in the sense that coming from the UK and then living here, seeing the differences of how people live, and to see that a family home is a lot more relaxed, but also to pull on that elevated and timeless sensibility from the UK definitely did come together naturally, but also just again being exposed and working with so many different clients had also given me this experience and amazing opportunity to really try something new. No one, when I moved here, was painting walls black or like doing dark spaces or really doing a deep mood. It was very light, airy, beachy. And for me, I really delve into that kind of moodier, richer tone. And when I started doing that, it definitely was harder to convince clients at the time of really like, I live in a sunny place. Why would I want a dark, moodier space? But I think what my philosophy in general with design is it's not just what it looks like, but how you feel. And I think when you're used to living outside and 90% of the time, the weather is good here, sometimes you crave that cozy like moment that feels really nurturing. And it's really important to me in any of the projects that I do, that it's almost a sense of relief when you come home. You can take your shoes off, feel really relaxed. And while it is a sunny, more relaxed culture and environment, it's still stressful like any city in the world. So I think all the projects here that I've been working on, I definitely bring that UK coziness that I crave all the time.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And certainly I think it's, knowing your work, your neutral palette is almost, it's a moody palette.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. It's more neutral for sure.
And do you like to bring in bold color? By bold, I suppose I don't mean dark. I mean brighter. Or when you work to incorporate other colors, how does that look?
So I think when it comes to color, again, like everything for me as a creative is always an evolution. And where I'm at even right now, I definitely am leaning into way more color, way more print, and really mixing up the palettes. But even still, I think the way I'm bringing in color, it's almost in these accent pieces, and it might be in like a sconce or the trim of something, but it's not necessarily like one big main piece that's a bright color, because I think my whole idea is that I want to have high impact in a space, but livability. And a lot of the clients that come to me want something that feels like timeless, that they can grow with, that they're not stuck on a space that feels so designed of a time when they made those decisions. But I definitely love to lean more into color right now. And I think even just the amount of textiles and fabrics that have the perfect tonality, that's what it is for me, is it's finding that right tone and that right shade, that while it is bringing in amazing color, I mean, even sitting on a pink sofa that I'm sitting on right now, to me, it's all about what it's paired with. It's like, I like to describe a room, and I learned this from a client recently, where everything is an event or it's a non-event. So it's finding like what is the event in the space and what is the non-event. The sofa might be the event, but then the rug for me is not an event. And it's really finding the balance of where to push and pull and where you're going to have that bold statement. But for me, the understatedness of it all is what the statement is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And it's actually really interesting when you're looking at your rooms. And how does, when obviously you bring in a lot of texture in your materials, do you have any kind of favorite materials to work with?
Yeah, I would say there's always go-tos for every project. Like I'm very drawn to like luxe, rich textiles like mohairs. I love obviously using like a washed, stone washed linens, and I really love woods in all forms. But also I think every project, it's important to bring in that new texture. And recently I've been very much into wicker, rattan, those types of textures. And I worked on a project that we just finished in Florida, and to bring in that kind of more natural organic material, but then contrasted with a rich luxe velvet or a mohair, is I'm really liking how those materials kind of work together. And then again, with woods, it's all about, I mean, I've really created a library in my studio that is it's almost like a perfect foundation of any space of like what wood tones I'm using. And so while all the projects we want to start fresh and from a new perspective, there's always those go-to materials that I know bring in that richness and have that sense of timelessness. So yeah, I would say.
Do you engage with trends at all? Or do you feel like, you know, does that kind of touch your radar, or are you kind of quite focused on your own aesthetic?
So good question. I definitely do not like to, this is a very two-pronged question because I hate trends. I actually don't like to do, that's a very strong word, but I don't love trends. I like to do things that are timeless. But unfortunately, with everything being so exposed and everything everywhere, I end up feeling like what I'm doing, whether it is not a trend, might become a trend, or that I'm seeing something that isn't a trend just naturally with how the interior design world works today. Is we're exposed to so much content. And when I started, I mean, obviously people have been doing plaster walls since like the 10th century, like it doesn't matter, like, but in LA, for example, when I started doing these textured walls, now I see it everywhere. And then it almost, when you, it's for me, it's not even trends, it's more when you see things overdone and exposed, that's my radar to be like, okay, I need to like get back to the drawing board and really make sure that we're doing something that feels fresh and unique. And by no means do I think if everyone has something, it's a bad thing. I think good design kind of transcends, and it's how you use it. The same way that if someone was to wear the exact same coat as you, it's really how you style it and how you apply it. So yeah, but typically I try to stay away from trends just because clients want a space that feel that they can like grow with, and it doesn't feel so of a time.
Yeah, we've got some images actually, which I think would nicely illustrate all that you've been talking about. So the first project, I think, is the cabin in Idaho that you designed for the actor Aaron Paul.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So it's a long project. We worked on for 3 years from the ground up.
And tell us about, you know, what was his brief? What were you know, obviously you can really clearly see your kind of interplay between the cozy and then the kind of open here. Talk us through the building, the architecture, you know, what your brief was.
Sure. So we, at the beginning of the project, we worked with an architect who really, what Aaron wanted is to make this house feel like it had been here for hundreds of years. And that brief initially is very daunting because creating a ground up house from scratch and making it have that patina and like layers and real like lived in feel is a challenge. But he also wanted it to feel interesting, unique, and feel special and really be a reflection of his family, but also just the way he lives. So in the project, and we'll see in different spaces how in these open plan spaces in the main area on the main level, we really brought in a lot of these like reclaimed wood materials that we did on all of the walls. And it's a process that I learned, I think it's called chinking, where we got these wood amazing boards, and then in between is almost like this cast sand texture. So it's very, so the whole foundation of this house when it came to materials was that we wanted to have that be where all the focus was, so that the furniture was really an accent, and it allowed the space to really create this indoor outdoor flow, because right outside of these windows is a river, and it was all you want to see is the outside. So it's important not to pick overwhelming prints fabrics that distracted from the nature. So in here, we really wanted it to be very comfortable, a communal space that friends could come together and family. And we designed custom, everything in here we kind of did custom with the upholstery, because the scale, even though it looks like a normal room to some degree, like that sofa was probably like 50 inches deep at some point. Everything is very large and overscale, but at the same time, it wanted to feel intimate and comfortable. And interestingly, when you're in the space, it doesn't feel so overwhelming. When you're sitting down, it actually does have a very grounding nature. But again, we chose these rich linens and amazing woven jute rugs, and then really brought in some beautiful primitive, the console table and the side table, and wanted to add these rich wood tones. And yeah, that was pretty much the brief in this house. And as we go through, you'll kind of see.
Next, and you can see again that amazing use of texture and your palette.
And I think back to what I was saying just before is, I think that when you look at this kitchen, the immediate thing when we started was, oh, just wrap the stone on the backsplash. But I wanted to pare back that one element that was obvious, that you would think is this heavy cabin, but really do like a beautiful plaster backsplash with no tile, and really show how this pared back moment in the kitchen is a really nice contrast to that stone colonnade on the wall. And then with all our countertops, we did this custom like poured concrete that we custom colored. But then I wanted to mix it with the brass fixtures, so there was this like cooler tone with the warmth, but then again bring in like the rattan and the bar stools, so that was a real balance of the warm and also the inviting, but also something that feels very clean and a little more restrained. So that was really the brief too, is not for it to not feel too thematic, which is really easy to do, especially when it's a new construction and it's a mountain home essentially. And then this was the hallway from the living room to like the primary suite. And on the left, we actually created this cabinet that is glass on both sides, and the dining room is to the left, which I think we'll see in the next picture. And then here again, it was all about working with the rich wood tones that we had used, and to create that consistency. I think in all my projects in these houses, especially given the scale of them, it's so important to pick a palette that you see consistently through the spaces, so that it doesn't feel like every time you go to a different space you're in a new house. But again, it's like keeping that foundation similar. And I think in here as well, we wanted to bring in a beautiful antique Persian rug that had these deep, rich tones to it, and these browns and almost merlots, and then tied it together with these very relaxed slip-covered chairs, which again is all about, for me, is back to the event and non-event, is these chairs, I wanted them to be so seamless and not really a big focal. And I think that's really true to a lot of the furniture in this house, is it was a lot of work almost being really restrained and not doing too much.
I love the way you mix contemporary pieces with quite traditional pieces. Yeah, it's like a real interplay in each of the spaces between quite classic design and very modern. It's really interesting. We have another project to look at next, just mindful of time, which is a gorgeous home we did for a family in the Beverly Hills, which is this one. Talk us through your brief and your kind of design aesthetic here.
So really with this project, I wanted to work with the client to create almost like an Italian villa in regards to like the materials, but also juxtaposed with contemporary and also some vintage pieces. And when we started the project, it was a full remodel. So doing a remodel in LA is always a challenge because you're working with so much space of existing house. So we really had this house back. Like this house had a lot of moldings, baseboards, casings, crown moldings. We stripped everything back. We got this amazing reclaimed oak floor from Exquisite Surfaces, and we did this random width oak, and it was tonal with the stone and the entry. And I really wanted all the walls again to have this soft plaster texture, which is hard actually to see in this picture, but really create this warmth. And again, in this house, paring back everything with regards to all the moldings. But then the fireplace in here was definitely a focus that we wanted to create something that was high impact and bold, that allowed the rest of the space to be a little more toned down. And this is one of the first projects I haven't done a rug in a living room. And it was a very conscious choice. A, because I felt like the room felt finished and already had that warmth given the texture of the floor. It almost has that amazing feeling when you're on a vacation, when you walk barefoot on like a deck. And I loved that kind of feeling on my feet. And I think in the living room with the texture of the sofa, I think it worked well. And then in the dining room, a lot of the furniture here was vintage. We got this beautiful table from a place called Luca Antiques that I love. That is this amazing rich walnut that has a gorgeous patina to it. But then we chose to go with a more contemporary light fixture from a company called Rewire that I work with a lot. And I like how they kind of interplay together, but also then this oversized, large, more like ebonized piece of furniture on the back wall, I think was really nice way to ground the whole space.
Yeah, I think throughout your work, you can see that like the use of vintage. I think, yeah, here's a really good example where you kind of create your event with your piece that's so standout and, you know, such a either bespoke piece or a found piece. It's really striking.
Thank you. Yeah, I think especially in this room, and I say this to people with smaller spaces, is really find that one thing that creates the moment instead of having so many different overdoing a space. It's better to have something that has more of a high impact and less pieces, and to create this look. And we really went with a bold, darker color that again is pushing clients here, because I think that they're so used to light, airy spaces. But again, having the option of going into one room that does feel more of like a enclosed but comfortable, cozy space, especially when you're working. For me personally, I work in like dim lit spaces with candles on. So again, I think it's all about everyone, how they live, and every client is different. And I try to bring a new approach depending on how they live. So it's not a one size fits all.
Yeah, the last house we're going to look at, just going to move on to the next one because we've got an amazing Spanish colonial house that you've done that you're going to tell us about, which I think is really timeless and another really good example of how your work is so flexible. You do kind of, as you say, iterate to meet the brief. Tell us about this one.
So this house was built in the 20s, which for LA people is very old. Like it's not the same as the UK, but 1920s is where it all begins architecturally. So this was a dream for me to work on a project that had that history. We kind of doubled the square footage of this house, and again wanted to continue the timeless classic elements of a Paul Williams home, which has these beautiful like terracotta floors, textured plaster walls, and these beautiful like oversized windows everywhere. And in here, this is the nook and kitchen that was kind of the breakfast area that I wanted to create a really comfortable built-in banquette. And we chose this print on the drapes that is actually from Scalamandre, I think it was, and I love the print. And it has this amazing, again, the color of it is very brown, muted tonal. And then we found this vintage light that was in, I think it was Adolf Laus is the designer of the light. And I just love how in this space, the fabric of the Roman shades with the light fixture and the upholstery is an immediate inviting corner.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. And then the living room as well is really interesting. And, you know, I've heard you speak in the past about creating multiple seating areas in rooms. I think the living room is a really good example of that.
Yeah.
That's what you look to do.
definitely. I mean, in most living rooms, if the space allows, I love to really create two seating areas for conversations to happen when you're entertaining, but also if it's just you and your family alone, I think it is nice to have these really layered spaces that you can introduce new textures and textiles. And I'm very big on living rooms is like a perfect example of where you can have a little more fun with your materiality. And I mean, even in just this bar, which is in the next space, we chose this deep, mellow, rich tone, but I wanted the bar stools to almost feel tonal with it, but introduced a new texture with the rich wood. And again, as you can see, this house is kind of open plan. So you're going from light space to dark space. And I think that's kind of my key is when I'm doing a darker, more intimate space is to know that you can have that respite of going into a light space in between that experience room to room. And then in this library, we had this amazing original ceiling that we wanted to keep, but we kind of stripped it back to just feel a little more relaxed and not as heavy, because typically a lot of Spanish revival is very lacquered, rich, shiny woods. And yeah, and here we did a lot of custom furniture and created this amazing travertine stone table that was more of an object because it wasn't such a large space.
It's interesting, I think, you know, thinking about trends and how really kind of the only enduring trend that the thread of all, you know, projects is it's bespoke and custom. You know, it's like that you know, having that investment in creating something perfectly for a space, whether it's, as you said earlier, a deeper sofa or, you know, an amazing table, whatever it is, to kind of elevate it to the next level. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, I think with all the homes, I think it is the reason why we do a lot of custom is because I really like to design holistically of what I think the space should be. And then we try to find whether it's a custom piece, a vintage piece, or something from a manufacturer that we love, or another artisan that we love. And that's kind of how I source the projects. And even with this bed, I had this Lewis and Wood fabric that I was obsessed with. And I really wanted to use it for drapery. And then eventually the client didn't love too much print. So I suggested doing it just on the bed. And we chose this colorway that, again, is in the brown tones, which is a favorite of mine because I think it really transcends in all different types of architectural spaces. And this bed I loved in here because we really paired it together with just a Delaquania like linen that had this really nice rusty tone to it.
I'm bereft that we're running out of time, but I am going to insist that we take a few minutes to talk about the expert because it's just such an interesting concept. And I think, you know, so many people who are listening today, I'm sure, will be either on it as designers or looking to engage with it. So tell us why, you know, what drove you to co-found it?
So during the pandemic, which to be honest, and any interior designer listening, they were, I'm sure, still very busy with people wanting things in their houses. The time that I did have, I was seeing that a lot of people were reaching out to me on Instagram asking to do online video consultations, which is something that I've never done. And immediately as a designer, anything tech related, I'm very anti and I don't particularly want to do. And my friend, my co-founder, Leo Siegel, said to me, he's like, Jake, let's just do one of them, see how it is. I'm just curious. And he had just sold his company at the time. And we did a call. It went really well because I didn't know what I could say in an hour, and realizing how much information from years of experience can be kind of translated to someone in an hour for their house is amazing what you can do. So we looked at each other and we were like, this is a full business. Think about how many other designers are getting constant calls from people wanting to do their houses. But the biggest difference is that with interior design, whether it's a full service, people are paying design fees, retainers, and sometimes they just have one or two spaces that they need help with, and they don't necessarily want to hire a full-time interior designer because it doesn't make sense, and the designer wouldn't necessarily be able to take that scope of work on. So given it being a win-win for both parties, I really was excited to work with Leo to create this company that allowed us to have these like one-on-one interpersonal calls all the way around the world. And we've done calls from in the Middle East, in the UK, obviously the US, we've done them pretty much everywhere, and it's been so exciting to bring people together that we wouldn't typically meet or work together. So for people to have that access and almost democratizing design and giving accessibility to everyone is at the forefront of what the expert really stands for, and what our mission is to allow people to have access to the designers that they love, they follow, they're fans of, and that they really want a piece of for their own home. And it's an affordable and also allows them to feel like this level of, we still want to be inspirational to everyone, but how can they take that one piece or that takeaway home with them that makes sense in their own home? So yeah, that's what we do.
The uptake is amazing. I mean, your lineup is so impressive, and I think it is wonderful to be bringing all those people to, you know, everybody virtually. I think it's transformative. I'm going to have to break us off here. You've taken us from London to LA, all Saints to Santa Monica. Talked about events, non-events, texture, neutrals. It's been really, really interesting. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. And by the way, I'm the biggest fan of you guys and absolutely love what you do. So thank you. I'm so privileged to even be talking to you. So thank you.
Well, the feeling's mutual. So thanks very much, Jake. Speak soon.
Bye, guys.
Bye.